How's it going, everyone? It's me, V, with Nékem. Sorry, I'm trying to learn how to pronounce it, but it's to change something. And what I want to do is start making suggestions for changes of the system, because people want to know what needs to be done. And why not come from the horse's mouth, I guess. I'm an Indigenous man who's been in and out of the system, in and out of the child welfare system, in and out of institutions and treatment centers and mental health programs. And I want to give you guys ideas of what needs to be changed in the system, and where can you point me in the right direction to make these changes happen. Because we can protest and we can share all of this information, but what really needs to happen is we need to get involved with whoever to make programs happen for, Indigenous men that suffer from trauma and addiction, and homeless people that suffer from addiction and mental health, and creating more programs for women and addiction programs specifically for women that are family oriented. Changing laws in the system that'll create less criminals and give us a better idea of what we need to do to change. So I want to touch on three things that I'm going to go in detail later on, but I'm going to give you guys an idea right now of what I'm going to talk about. For me personally, Indigenous men, we have lack of shelter, housing, help. A lot of these trauma-based programs in Alberta have a lot of restrictions on them. If you're a violent offender, if you have violence on your record, you're pretty much guaranteed you're not going to get help, because Alberta's healthcare and mental health care system is so privatized that they have to follow all these guidelines, because I don't even know why. I just think it's a bullshit law. I reached out to CC4MS in Calgary 5 years ago to talk about sexual abuse that I went through, and I was ready to deal with all that stuff. And they told me that they couldn't see me because I have violent offenses on my record, which really tore me apart, because I really wanted to deal with those issues at the time. I wanted to figure out my sexual identity through working through all that stuff. And I was told that they couldn't help me because I have violence on my record. And I know a lot of other Native men that have gone through similar stuff. We can't go into certain programs because, we punch someone out when we're drunk, or, when we're high. And we get high and drunk because we're running from trauma. That's what I'm suggesting for Native men, is more trauma-based programs for violent offenders that deal with their trauma. Maybe if these men dealt with their trauma and their issues, they wouldn't be reoffenders. Create more efficient recovery, addiction, and mental health programs for people that are incarcerated, especially Indigenous, because 47% of the incarcerated population in Alberta right now is Indigenous. So if people are saying that, we don't need to have an Indigenous thing for our jail systems, I think we do, because there's 47% of the population in jail it is Indigenous. So there you go. If we had these programs, not just like traditional programs, but healing programs, like actual trauma-based programs for these men, I think there would be less reoffenders, and once these men became good enough, like mentally and emotionally, I think that they would be the best candidates to work with at-risk youth and to guide them into not going in that direction. And that's something that I want to talk about getting started down the road. But these, like I said, these are just some ideas of what I'm going to be talking about. So, what isn't working for these men or for us is addiction-focused, faith-based programs. These old ideas, these old systems aren't working. Our recovery rates are ridiculous. They're like, you look at the recovery rates in a lot of these treatment centers, and there's only like 2 to 5% staying sober within the year. A lot of them relapse. That just means that we need to advance like our technology, our mental health, the ways that we deal with addiction, the ways that we deal with trauma, all needs to change. And it's not gonna fix itself if we don't get the right people involved. And that's honestly what I want to do. If we're gonna, just from my experience, I've gone through these marble mills, these certificate mills. I have a few certificates from a few different treatment centers that only focused on addiction, didn't focus on mental health or trauma. I tried talking about the sexual abuse that I went through and my identity issues, and I got threatened to get kicked out. And this was in Calgary. A counselor came and told me that if I brought that stuff up again, I could be discharged for making other men uncomfortable. I could be discharged for making other men uncomfortable. In the same treatment center, told me that I could get discharged for referring to myself as an Indian. And I told them that it says that on my status card. It says Certificate of Indian Status. If you don't like me using that word, tell the government to take it off my status card. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. And all of these faith-based programs, like, I'm not knocking faith. I'm not knocking God. I'm just saying that there's more to recovery than God. There's more to recovery than all that other shit. There's trauma. There's mental health issues. There's underlying issues for the majority of addicts. And that's stuff that needs to really be addressed. I could go to fucking 20 different treatment centers and I can pretty much teach all the crap that they teach right now, because I've been through 5 treatment centers, 3 ADAC day programs, and a dual diagnosis program at the Foothills. So yeah, I can talk to you about your feelings and your emotions and what isn't a feeling, what's not an emotion, what causes my addiction, but I can't talk about the cause of my addiction. I can say, yeah, I was sexually abused as a kid. But in treatment, that's as far as you're allowed to go. So that's got to change. Sober living housing for Indigenous men. So we're living in housing for Indigenous people in general. A lot of us are angry and we lash out because we've gone through a lot of trauma, abuse, sexual abuse, mental, physical, emotional. We're really fucking wounded people. And you put these wounded, fucked up people in with some other, like, different types of wounded, fucked up people. And because we are aggressive and scary, because that's what we were taught, we have nowhere else to go, and we go to these places and we get kicked out, and we're fucked, and we have nowhere. I got kicked out of the Dream Center because of my temper. And they couldn't help me. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I ended up staying in the back of some really racist dude's backyard in his camper, and we have nowhere to go. There is no long-term aftercare for previously incarcerated Indigenous people or other minorities, other white people. They don't. We get released from jail and we have to go to the homeless shelter. We finish treatment sometimes and we end up on the streets because no one will take us because of our record. No one will take us because of our temper. No one will take us because we're scary. And if you really want evidence of this, look at the incarcerated population, look at the homeless population, look at the population in and out of treatment, look at the population in and out of detoxes. That's yeah. What needs to be done is create better treatment programs that include, people with criminal records that focus on not only on addiction, but trauma and mental health. They also got to include life skills, because a lot of addicts that I know don't even know how to fucking boil rice. Like, they don't know how to cook rice or macaroni. They can't fucking make oatmeal. They've never made that kind of stuff in their life. and just putting people in these programs where all they do is focus on your addiction and don't focus on anything other than just your addiction. You're setting people up for failure because they get out of treatment and they're like, oh God, what do I do now? I know all about my addiction, but I don't know fuck all about life. I don't know how to, some of them don't know how to pay bills. Some of them don't know how to buy groceries. Simple shit that we take for granted. Create similar programs for jail systems, ones that focus on reoffenders who create or who are in and out of jail. The ones that are constantly like in for 6 months, out for a month, in for a year, out for a month. Those guys need help. There's something not right here, and just locking them up and institutionalizing them is what we're doing. You're creating people that are dependent on the system, and it's not helping anyone. It's costing us as a society more money to have these reoffenders in and out than it does for us to just actually create programs that counsel these people and create give them like job experiences and what they need. Create better integrated programs for criminals in life skills. Make ex-cons work with former ex-cons to make them better members of society. There's an idea that I want to start for Indigenous people with anger issues, and just a support group that I'm going to get help started with, because luckily I got to talk to Scott McKean, who's going to point me in the right direction and get these things started. Instead of locking up offenders, especially ones with violence towards women, create programs that deal with anger and managing emotions. Locking up people with issues only creates more issues. Create group therapy programs for men to share and express emotions in a safe, healthy way, and teach them to be human, talk about how to react healthy. None of this stuff is taught in treatment. None of this stuff is taught in jail. When I was in jail, I learned how to pack Kinder eggs up my ass and plunge my toilet so I can smoke. I learned how to break into a safe. I know how to do a bunch of things that I shouldn't know how to do. So let's quit creating more criminals. Addiction and mental health. A lot of this coincides with the jail stuff, but addiction and mental health, there's not enough successful addiction and mental health programs. You look at the treatment centers in and around Alberta, and a lot of them have a 5 to 10% recovery rate. And that's if they're lucky. We need to change in our systems and how we deal with addiction, how we deal with mental health. We got to quit sweeping these people under the rug and expecting the police to deal with them, because that's, a lot of that's why there's a lot of issues with the cops. I'm not saying that's, I really don't want to get into this, but, cops are forced to deal with addicts. They're forced to deal with homelessness. They're forced to deal with a lot of things that they aren't trained to deal with. They go through a lot of trauma themselves, and yeah, no wonder they fucking do what they do. I'm not saying they're good or bad people, because some cops are good, some cops are bad. I've had experiences with both. I've had cops tie me to or handcuff me to a bar in a cell until I pissed myself, and then made me walk home in the cold at 4 a.m. So, but I also had a cop save my life. So we need better programs to help people. My desired goal is to change in our systems and how we deal with the addiction and mental health. We can use city resources. City of Edmonton, the city of Calgary, they believe it or not, they own a lot of property. They own a lot of homes. As a roofer, I've worked on a lot of city of Edmonton houses. Those houses can be, a lot of the houses that the city uses can be turned into mental health care houses for, homeless people. They can be turned into actual harm reduction living houses where it's not just where people just aren't making money off of our sick and needy, because that's what a lot of these non-for-profit organizations do. And this is this also, like, what isn't working in our system? Faith-based recovery programs that only focus on addiction. They're pretty much certificate mills and marble mills. addicts suffering from trauma and underlying issues, they don't deal with it. They complete these programs with a false idea of recovery because they know all about their addiction and nothing about they didn't deal with their trauma. So they get put into these houses where, you're sober for like 30 days, 3 months, a year, living in a treatment facility, and then you get put out into the world and you don't have that support network around you. So of course, a majority of them relapse. I've done it multiple times. And the real kicker is that it's draining our tax dollars. Yeah, I'm a tax-paying citizen. As an Indigenous person, I pay taxes. And you know what? I know that my tax dollars are going to these marble mills and these certificate mills that give people a false idea of recovery. They get forced into these non-for-profit Christian sober living places, and they aren't equipped to deal with people that have dealt with trauma. And all of these sober living places have a sobriety clause in their damage deposit or in their lease agreement. So if you relapse, you don't get your damage deposit back. And a majority of them, if you relapse and you get kicked out and you come back, you have to pay for another damage deposit, even if you didn't damage anything, which is kind of fucked up. And we need to locate these housing, these sober living situations in better areas. I lived one behind Marlborough Mall in Calgary, and if you don't know Calgary, Marlborough Mall is pretty, like, that area is pretty fucking ghetto. And I was in an Indigenous sober living house, and we lived right next to a trap house. None of the clients that I lived with stayed sober for longer than 6 months in that house. Because it was everywhere. And this was supposed to be an Indigenous house, like an Indigenous. Yeah, it's disgusting. If you want proof that none of that, like, this kind of stuff isn't working, look at the recovery rates. Look at the overdoses, the high crime rates. The amount of tax dollars that go into treatment programs that give people a fake sense of recovery, the amount of tax dollars going into policing institutions. Instead of locking these people up, we should be finding ways to help them. Propose solutions. If we are going to continue to privatize our addiction and mental health care programs, they need to step up their game. Recovery rates need to change, and their approach to, if recovery rates are low, I don't want my tax dollars going to their programs. Utilize city property to house homeless people with mental health issues, sober living, and harm reduction housing that works, and not just drain on the system. Abolish the sobriety clauses in these fucking, in these sober living places that are going to continue running like Oxford House, like Dream Center. Create better, longer aftercare programs for addicts. We need to take action, and I don't know where to go with all this action, but it needs to be done. Another thing that I wanted to touch on was sex workers and women escaping violence, lack of proper programs, lack of safe work environments, I know there's a couple safe houses in Edmonton that are for women escaping domestic violence or violence. I know one of them's down just off of 107th. I'm not going to say what street, but they're just off 107th Ave in a really disgusting neighborhood where everywhere on every corner, pretty much there's somebody, either selling fentanyl or meth or crack or something. And these women, that are escaping domestic violence, that are escaping these issues, are put into this housing unit for them, all of them together. So I don't know how many women fit in this place, but it's a bunch of them together, and a bunch of single moms with kids that are escaping trauma in a really fucking shitty neighborhood where there's drugs readily available everywhere. They don't have the proper staff on call there on hand. They have a couple security guards that work at this building, but they don't have counselors there when these women are having mental breakdowns and want to go get high. So, and I personally know a couple of them that were, just addicted to pharmaceuticals, and they ended up leaving that safe house addicted to fentanyl, addicted to down, and she became a sex worker. It's just fucked up, because there are a lot of women that go through that place that end up in that situation, that they get locked up with all these other women. They're escaping trauma and abuse. They have no one to talk to, no one to turn to. So they go outside, have a smoke. There's someone out there just waiting to hand them some dope and say, here, you want me to try this out? If you like it, whatever, And then within a week, they owe that drug dealer $100 or whatever, and they're hooked on down. They're hooked on meth, and they become sex workers, and then they lose their kids because they become addicts, because of the system that's built to protect them destroyed them. So that needs to change. This motion for the city of Edmonton to ban massage parlors, it has to stop. A lot of these women are single mothers that, have families to support, and they do it through sex work. And I can't blame them. They're doing what they're doing. They do what they got to do. So don't fucking shame them for doing what they got to do to take care of their family. That motion has to be stopped. The city of Edmonton has to stop. Today. We also have lack of recovery programs for women, family-based recovery programs for women to take their kids. The mental affliction that I've seen on women when they're separated from their children it's terrible. our system they punish these women for being addicts, and they try to like help themselves, so they take their kids away. And I honestly think that it's more of I think it's detrimental to their mental health, to their well-being, to their recovery. I think we need more treatment centers that cater to not just women with kids, but also men with kids, family-based addiction programs. If we created better programs instead of relying on these non-for-profit organizations, or if we put restrictions on them, I'm pretty sure we would have less addicts, less women turning to sex work because, they didn't have anywhere else to go. So move the safe houses to better locations. Don't tell anyone. Fucking just move fucking safe houses to somewhere where women will be safer and away from all that shit. Because you're setting them up for failure. Stop the motion to ban massage parlors. There's 1,000 women that'll be either forced to work out throughout their home or through somewhere else, and if they're forced to do that, that'll endanger their families. It'll endanger them completely. So yeah, we got to stop that motion. because massage parlors give these women a safe place to work. They have records of people that are going in and out. This just motion has to be changed. It has to be stopped. So, better programs for these women escaping domestic violence. Instead of basically incarcerating them, let's put them in safe houses where they have social workers and counselors on hand that they can talk to. Instead of going to turn to drugs or alcohol, they can just say, hey, like, I need someone to talk to. More trauma-based programs like that. Instead of locking them all up in a fucking building and saying, here, you're safe. There's a security guard downstairs, just be careful. If you need someone to talk to, call the crisis line, because that's what they do. So yeah, we need more programs like that. We as a society need to stop making the laws for sex workers and ask sex workers what will help keep them safe. We got to create more programs for them if they want to get out of the industry. Job programs. I know some sex workers that went through some programs that said that they got minimum wage jobs and really shitty like hotels where they were like front of house staff, or they got like cleaning jobs where they did really like shitty fucking work for shitty fucking pay. And no wonder they go back to what they were doing. We're not giving them a fighting chance. So those programs need to be better. They need to change. These programs all need to change. And later on, I'm going to give you a better outline of what these programs are going to look like. But for now, yeah, those are the 3 main issues that I want to talk about, that I want to bring up. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys y'all have a good day. And yeah, take care.